Hi, everybody. I'm Paul Price, CEO at Argyle Executive Forum, and welcome to this Executive Spotlight today, focusing on experience marketing strategy. We hope that in the course of the next 20 to 30 minutes or so, you'll enjoy this brief presentation on an exciting new way to think about marketing in the 21st century and adapting a model to the many new challenges that we all face as B2B marketers. In the course of the next few minutes or so, I'm going to spend some time looking at the big picture so far as those changes that have occurred that make it so important to rethink and revisit many of the assumptions that we make about marketing in today's climate. And then spend some time on the model itself without being too esoteric or abstract. Hopefully, I'm going to share with you a practical and actionable way of thinking about your marketing in a perspective that might give you more opportunities to avail yourselves of with the, I'm sure, increasing and ever-increasing pressures that you already have on the resources that you have. And then finally suggest, in light of this, these recommendations, some quick wins, some things that you can do almost immediately or that you should have done by now that can take advantage of the experience marketing concept. But let me begin first by framing things in the highest level, because it is so important to remember what it is that is driving the important need for thinking differently about marketing in the 21st century, and not least of which is that CEOs keep on prioritizing growth above all of the other very important items on their to-do list. In this analysis provided by Forrester, comparing to 2021 here at the end of 2022, despite some small decrease in agreement amongst the sample polled, still an overwhelming majority of CEOs prioritize growth above all others as a continued trend in the course of the last several years. Growth has become the most important job of a CEO, and his and hers accountability to whomever his stakeholders or her shareholders may be. And so as a consequence, it's no surprise then when asked, B2B CMOs focus very much on the pipeline. And again, they do so in broad correlation with their CEOs, practically double the level of agreement to pipeline growth above other priorities, which also, if you include the ever important idea of expanding markets, as well as accelerating digital transformation, presumably for the same purposes, growth is, of course, the CMO's most important job, and perhaps the focal point of their job. And it is little wonder then that the pipeline and filling that pipeline becomes so important. And what is, I think, very important by way of laying some pavement towards the characteristic of this new marketing model is the ever increasing importance of customer experience for the CMO as a priority. The language itself is, I think, a very important entree to the arrival of this model, and its embrace by many different businesses in many different categories, not just the experience of customers, but also of ecosystem partners, and of the many other dimensions of a business that the CMO can configure. But it is in light of the fact that B2B buyers' attention is increasingly hard to get. I find this Gartner graphic so useful as a way of reminding ourselves of the day-to-day burden of being a buyer in the B2B world, the otherwise apparently simple process steps that they have to follow, which of course belie the complexity of the many things that buyers must proceed with in order to arrive at a purchase. And so when we think about being the B2B CMO and the B2B marketing team, it is little wonder that we might well be inspired to think, well, are there other ways in which, in light of this extraordinarily difficult number of barriers to achieving attention amongst our target buyer, are there other ways in which marketing can act to influence them? And I do want to just finish on this point with something I think that is increasingly of importance to remind ourselves in light of a good deal of the more recent science around how marketing works, how it specifically doesn't work, is the very clear conclusion that passive random marketing is ignored, and that we place marketing and marketing tactics in unusual media, or in media we may take for granted, and channels that we may have assumed worked in the past, to be very likely candidates for those that customers, whether consumers or business-to-business customers, have long since developed, as we've learnt through a lot of the most recent science, have long since developed strategies to ignore and to go past. And so with that in mind, it's of course as equally important to remember that digital is of course the overwhelming driver of transformation for marketing in the 21st century. And any basic analysis of marketing budgets in the course of the last several years has just witnessed this extraordinary change in what marketers are now investing in by virtue of the opportunities that digital transformation for marketing has presented, but also has created a good deal many more budget items and more strategic choices, and hence more strategic dilemmas, again calling for perhaps different ways of thinking about how do I go about framing my marketing budget, how do I go about making these decisions, is the traditional marketing model the right way to do that anymore? And so I introduced this concept of the experience marketing model in light of these very important dynamics, not least of which is marketing's digital transformation, that digital now permeates every aperture of marketing and is largely the most important instrument with which marketers are given the opportunity to apply to their business. And I would put it to you that the difference between 20th century and 21st century marketing is, in fact, the experiences that marketing can now generate. And this is a very important word, but it's a word nevertheless with semantically important meaning, because one of the things that digitization of so many marketing channels has enabled is this fusion of product with services, and the inherent emphasis that marketing devices that have become essential to conveying marketing experiences are in and of themselves so dramatically different when the experience of that digital experience is put at the forefront. And if there was a simple principle that I think characterizes the experience marketing model, is the idea that customer experience is at the center of it, regardless of whether you're a B2B business, you're a buyer, you're a seller. It is the many experiences that a marketer has at their fingertips, so to speak, and the choices that they get to make that make the difference between the old way of thinking about marketing and the new way. And perhaps this is a neat way of thinking about the difference between the two models. The experience marketing model is more about thinking of experiences instead of the 4 or 6 or 8 Ps that many of us were taught at college. That is the product experience, the pricing experience, the experience of the place in which we purchase the product. The essential difference is that we are concerned with the experience of those things, not the things themselves. And as equally important is embracing the idea of communities of importance to your brand or business than simply a target market. It's more than one target market. It's a community of folks influencing the buying decision, whether that's a primary buyer or others. And I'm going to expand on that shortly. And experience marketing is inherently also more focused on behavior than trying to change attitudes. I'm going to talk some more about this also, but attitudes are inherently difficult to change. We've learnt this over time, both from a science perspective, but it is simply a very expensive thing to do. People are lazy inherently. They don't like to change their mind. They adopt many different strategies, many different shortcuts to avoiding changing their minds. And on the other hand, the beauty of digitization is the degree to which it so inherently facilitates behaviors. I will talk more about this in a second, but behaviors, in my view, have always strategically been a more appropriate thing to think of and focus on. And in the experience marketing model in particular, this is the case. And we think more of customer journeys in the experience marketing model instead of media or apertures. We are concerned with a very holistic view of the path a customer takes from the beginning of their discovery process to the purchase itself, and in between all of that. And so in a nutshell, experience marketing is more focused on experiences, communities, having those communities undertake some form of behavior, and those behaviors occurring along a customer journey, depending on the business and the nature of that journey. And to expand on each of those a little, when we think about communities, we're thinking about their geographic distribution, of course, their income and their expenditures, their media and their pastimes, but we're also thinking about their role as influencers and as other roles, which I'll talk about. The customer journey is going to be concerned with channels and the apertures that occur along those journeys in which we have the opportunity to influence certain behaviors, and at various stages and levels of accessibility, which may or may not make it an appropriate time in which to attempt to influence the behaviors that occur at that time, and whether or not real or perceived ROI is something that's of value to reinforce at each of these particular points in the journey. And the context within which our brands or businesses are experienced in whatever manifestation that may be is an important way of thinking about how we can influence the buying process at a particular time in a given context with tangible or indeed intangible influences, and the degree to which there's receptivity or some level of perception available based on those, rather than the assumption that every point on the journey is an opportunity for assumed receptivity or some level of assumed perception in your brand or business's favor, which again is a very, very dangerous assumption to make, given what we now know about the way in which folks go about making purchase decisions. And then finally, the idea of content itself has become so important to come to the foreground because the category and brand relationships that your buyers have and the community of people that influence them and their brand and personal values, their self-interests and their influences, all of these things are vital to shaping content, which may be highly tailored accordingly, presenting their own challenges. You know, I do think that it's very helpful to adopt a consumer journey view to be the strategic starting point for identifying who it is that we want to influence, and that it's seen as a continuous journey experienced in different cycles of the buying process, that it's not a funnel. I think the idea of a funnel is by itself limited in the view that rather than accept that there is some loss or erosion from top to bottom, that there is really no bottom or top, depending on the stage at which your buyer or potential community is relative to being prospect or customers, that everybody is a prospect who simply needs to enter into some level of nurturing before they decide ultimately to enter into the purchase phase and head towards the opportunity you have to convert them into customers. We experience many of our clients who we think spend not enough time in recognizing that folks that may have entered the top of the funnel, who suddenly disappear for any number of different reasons, are not worth engaging and continuing to nurture until they are ready to emerge as a customer. And this is, again, a very helpful reminder to think of the customer journey as a much more appropriate replacement for the idea of the funnel, and that it is a continuum. It's a cycle of entering and re-entering the purchase process depending on their inclination, and thus looking at various opportunities at each stage of this continuum to think about these different contexts where, for example, we have opportunities to upsell and cross-sell and create experiences that promote that behavior, which are quite different to experiences that might promote retention or loyalty behavior. You get the idea. And every business, of course, warrants its own particular version of this very important model. But this is a good starting point and one which we can consider some more. I think also experienced marketers are, as importantly, embracing the idea of having communities, not simply a target market or a broad definition of target market, that there is a community of people involved in the buying decision. And this is upheld by a lot of research from some very, very well-known consultancies and some of the research, humbly as I can put it, that we've done that confirm that the buying process is more and more a process of collaboration amongst the clients or the buyers and the people that they work with. And so breaking this down into not just the buyer, but the community of users, the influencers, which of course has become quite famous in consumer marketing, but is growing in importance for consideration in B2B marketing, as evidenced by the rise of certain influencers in certain categories. As well as that, the partners that are so important strategically to your brand or your business, and the regulators, if they are of some importance to the buying process itself, as well as for other considerations. So, this is one way to pass down the idea of community, but the essential idea is still the same, that it is a community that is making the decision. They are having influence by degrees according to their role in that decision. It is not just a question of targeting a buyer. It's a question of indeed targeting a community which you need to define according to your business and what it sells. And as I've alluded to earlier, experienced marketers do best by focusing on behaviors. Now, why behaviors? Well, as I alluded to earlier, behaviors are a whole lot easier and less expensive to change than attitudes. Attitudes are inherently very difficult to change. Witness the polarization of many around certain issues. These are very, very difficult things to change. And also brand loyalties and loyalties to other intangible features of a particular brand are things that can be changed, but again, take a great deal of complexity and investment. On the other hand, if we focus on behaviors, we focus on something, firstly, which is acutely measurable. All behaviors generate some form of data point. This is an inherent feature of thinking about getting people to do something as opposed to think something, or even trying to inspire people to feel something. Getting people to do something inherently means that they are going to do something we can measure. It might be to purchase, it might be to press a button, it might be any number of other actions, but all of those things are more measurable. Another feature of focusing on behaviors strategically is that they're more predictable. Past behaviors are far and away the most reliable predictors of future behaviors. Attitudes are incredibly unreliable when it comes to predicting future outcomes. People will often say one thing, but really mean another. Often people will simply be dishonest about what they really mean because they don't feel that they want to share what they really mean. You get the picture. I don't need to go on. There's all sorts of prejudices that are inherent in collecting research, which is based on attitudes. Research, which is based on behaviors, is a great deal more reliable in terms of indicating what might happen in the future. And finally, behaviors are more manageable. One of the most important features of the digitization of just about everything in business is that digital channels are actionable. They can be activated. I can press a button. If I want to buy something on a screen, I can buy it. There are all sorts of ways in which digital devices and the screens that accompany them, as well as adjacent digital devices, which might be wearables or watches or whatever they may be. All of these, by way of an example, have created a world in which we can take certain actions when we choose to, and when those actions are convenient to take. The digitization of marketing is an inherently more actionable marketing model. And as I've mentioned, behaviors are inherently easier to change. Behaviors are largely instinctually driven. Again, some of the underlying science that I'd urge you to look into, that in books such as Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, for example, amongst others, where we now understand that there's not really a great deal of thought going into many of the actions that we take on a day-to-day basis, and in some cases, surprisingly, when it comes to large buying decisions. And so actions can occur, behaviors themselves are inherently much easier to change or manage as a consequence of that. One of the other features of digital, the digital revolution that's affecting marketing in particular, is just the plethora of more channel options created by it. And this piece of work conducted in 2020, seeking out the preferences of CMOs when it came to what channels they were going to be choosing in their forthcoming plans. The vast majority of the choices being made, again, not surprisingly, given the way in which budgets are being passed out, are digital by nature. And I would also just reflect on the fact that, content marketing, retargeting, email, video, and events are the top 5, and they are pretty consistently the top 5 in different orders, depending on the surveys and who is surveyed. But it's, I think, enlightening that the overwhelming majority of CMOs, when considering what it is they're doing and what they will do most likely, are attributing such importance to these 5 odd different experiences. The experience of content marketing being so valuable in helping to influence active research being undertaken by buyers. Retargeting, which of course has become extraordinarily important in terms of its relationship to search marketing and SEO in particular, which features, in my view, in B2B a great deal more so than people give it justice for. Email, we know, is the workhorse of digital marketing today, and I don't see that changing. I do see conversion rates becoming tougher and tougher as the recipients of these emails become more and more prone to put up their defenses, so to speak, and again adopt strategies to lessen their impact. But nevertheless, email still remains incredibly effective as a channel. Video marketing has come to the foreground in the last several years, and video experiences are so important because of their relationship to the buyer, their ability to communicate many things at once, their entertainment versus other sorts of experiences at particular times and places in a buying in a purchase cycle. And then finally the event marketing experience, which of course we are at the forefront of from a digital perspective. We see this being such an important influencer in shaping experiences by your buyers of your brand and your business through often very actionable information that's being presented in convenient and very relevant experiences through digital channels that we help our clients use and deploy in many different ways. So, I would, of course, stress the generality of this chart, and of course the likelihood that you have different needs to this one, but at the same time that there has been this extraordinary explosion in digital channels, there are still more coming. I present these numbers again with just for information purposes and reinforcing that we are really only just at the beginning, to some extent, of the expansion of digital experiences that are available as options to you as a marketer, and that many of these, albeit those, some of these are by now quite familiar, personalization, account-based marketing, are facilitated by advances in the supporting digital technology that makes this sort of thing possible at scale, compared to its impracticability, its impractical nature so many years ago. But also that there are a variety. I just call out influencer marketing, which is attributed to this sample, some 27% of the sample intending to use it amongst B2B marketers. My expectation is that this is probably going to grow as we become more adept at embracing the idea of influencers and their roles. But clearly, it's not going to take the same shape, perhaps, as it's more famously known in the consumer marketing world. The other feature then of being compelled on the one hand to put together multi-channel experiences in our marketing model is the priority that multi-channel experience marketing affords to content. Content has been, I think, overlooked in importance by B2B marketers for lots of reasons, which through no fault of anybody's. However, in light of the nature and complexity of the customer journey, the importance of context to the effectiveness of every experience, and I'm going to talk about that next, the number of different channels that there are, and the importance of content adapting to the nature of those channels. The content challenge for B2B marketers has never been greater. And I want to just make some observations about what we think is the most effective content. It tends to have three very important attributes which are worth keeping in mind. First of all, is that content should be inherently visual, to the extent that you can make sure that it is visual by nature, because we learn visually. 90% of what we learn through the retina. We're wired to learn and adapt to our surroundings as a result. And so we are heavily prejudiced biologically in favor of visualization as a method of communicating. And so visual content is particularly powerful. And this is something that B2B marketers could take on board and embrace further, because in my view, so few do it very, very well. Second, and perhaps to state the obvious, that it's relevant. Now, it's relevant because it's at the right time, at the right place. I don't mean that it's just relevant because it's saying something that's important to the target community, but that it's relevant because we want to make sure that it's optimized to be received, that it maximizes receptivity, again, at the right time and the right place. Some experiences are much better received and engaged when they are considered for this very important feature. And then finally, and perhaps surprising to some of you, but I'm going to just emphasize that the best experiences which take on the challenges of the relatively low attention span of the average community, whomever you are attempting to reach, the best experiences are emotional by nature. They go beyond selling benefits or features. They really draw out and evoke the underlying emotional benefit of whatever that is. Now, I appreciate that for many, the view may well be that, well, we sell a very rational product and we sell to a very rational buyer. And that, I'm not saying that that's not true, but I am saying that the additional layer of emotion that you can add, whether that's in color, whether that's in language, whether that's in some other form of visual experience, whatever that may be, everything helps. But in particular, the more emotional a layer you can add to your experience, the more successful that content will be. And as I've been talking about context, I do just want to unwrap that that very important concept, because it's very important to experience marketing. Context really reminds us, it reinforces the importance of receptivity. We are most receptive to certain experiences at certain points in time, and we are perhaps the best way to look at this by contrast is that we are the least receptive to experience at certain points of time. You know, if we picture the average living room, and not to dwell on this because it's an unusual example, but in the average living room over dinner, with the kids playing, the television blaring, this is probably one of the least receptive contexts in which to try to pitch a particular purchase. Now, that's an unusual example for B2B, but just to use it as an extreme, you get the idea. There are just certain moments when receptivity is more likely to be higher for a certain experience than there are others. And this is very important to consider when it comes to customer journeys, and in which context along those journeys are there opportunities or not to inspire certain behaviors using certain experiences to do so. And it brings to the foreground some of the weapons available to us to improve receptivity, again, through the sciences and through very, very strong examples. We know that personalization is a key to creating attention, to driving receptivity. As a corollary of that, then it reinforces the importance of CRM tools and your CRM plans, and underlying that, of course, is what is the product life cycle through which you and the community that you want to reach are engaged, and along that journey that they go through, where is it along that journey that they are most likely to be receptive to certain experiences. And then finally, it also reinforces the importance of your database and the sources and renewal of that database, so that you're reaching out to people who are most likely to be receptive simply because they're most likely to be buyers or part of the buying community. Context is an important and valuable consideration in planning your marketing, and may well help save you a lot of money by focusing on the areas where we really think the experience is most likely to be received, and as importantly, those in which there's very little likelihood of it occurring. So let me wrap up now with just a quick couple of thoughts about the things to do now, some quick wins for you to consider, to think about the 4 C's, think about your targets as communities, not targets, the mapping out the customer journey so that you have this very important model for thinking about where and when you can reach them, in what context that you do so, and what is the content of those experiences in that context which are most likely to drive the behaviors that you want. Expanding on the concept of community a little bit further, how much further can you define it? What might you think are the most important dimensions of that community? What is the biographic? Who has buying authority or influence authority? What are the patterns and the processes that goes through? But then, the underlying demographic, clearly the most familiar to all of us as marketers, but thinking very, very importantly about geographic distribution, because geography in the United States is such an important feature of creating experiences to influence people, as well as their income and expenditures, which are very important to understanding the sort of people that they are, and likewise their media and their pastimes. And then the psychographic of the community, the category and brand relationships that they have, the tangible and the intangible values that they bring to the transaction that you want to inspire, and the self-interests they have, which may or may not necessarily reflect on their role in the company, but their role in life, as well as the other things that influence them. Selfishly, we would urge any B2B marketer to be thinking very carefully about their event experience plan. Who are the communities that they can use events to inspire the behaviors that you'd like to occur? What is the content that is relevant to them that will be most receptive to the goals that you'll have for those events? Because event goals should and will be different according to who those communities are. And what are you doing before and after? We can help you with, of course, all of these considerations and do so for many of our clients. But having a plan that maps out these very important dimensions, reflecting the experience marketing model in our experience has led to a good deal of success. I would close also with, here are some sort of essential assets I think that the experience marketing model drives the need for, and with or without the experience marketing model, are generally in 21st century marketing most valuable. Of course, the question of first-party data. To what extent have you got what you can reliably believe is first-party data working on your behalf? What are the sources and of obtaining both that data in the first place and also renewing that data? And you should be thinking about the total addressable universe. It is well within the means of every organization through database management and database marketing to have a defined universe, as near to the universe as you would like it to be, through various resources that are now available that weren't available only a few years ago. And this leads to the important competency, in my view, of data analytics to the marketing team. What skills do you have in that area? Who is it in your team who can perhaps champion this role, or how might you bring that role on board? How might you be able to embrace the sorts of predictive modeling and scenario planning that good data analytics will provide to a marketing team to make the sort of choices that you need to make, because there are so many options today. And then finally, having the customer journey mapped. Where in home, in life, and in office are the buying stages of importance to your communities, and as a corollary of that, what is it that you can do to introduce experiences coincidentally with those stages that favor your business or your brand. And to do that, it may well be that you need some sort of voice of customer process, whether that's continuous tracking, whether that's annual or tactical, whether that's qualitative panels or quantitative surveys. And again, Argyle Research is very happy to help you out, as we've done with many, many others, in helping inform the construction of things such as customer journeys, informing questions that you feel that you really do need the answers to, but you just don't have the available research to tell you, through very short, sharp, robust, and very cost-efficient processes that we can engage in your behalf to get you those answers quite quickly. This is a very important adjunct of what we do for our clients, and we are delighted to help you with it going forward, should you so desire. And if you should so desire, you are welcome to contact me, pprice@argyleforum.com. Connect with me on LinkedIn at Paul N. Price. I hope you've enjoyed this brief presentation on a very exciting concept that I hope, if in part or if not in full, might help guide you in making some good decisions about the approach you take to marketing in 2023. Thank you once again for your attention, and good luck.